Thank you. It's good to be back in Amarillo. Some of you might remember I was here 3 years ago to talk about LGBT representation in advertising, and this is a much bigger crowd, so I'm very happy. All right, so let's dive in. Jody did a great job of introducing me. The only thing I'll add to that is that I forgot to put into this is that we're based in Reno, Nevada. Been in business for 6 years as of last month. We're very excited about that. And yeah, all right. I don't have anything else to add about myself except I wear just very many hats. I have a whole closet full of them. All right, so let's talk about social media, social impact marketing. I'm going to mess up a couple times, guys. All right, social impact marketing. One thing to keep in mind is that what we're seeing is that building it and hoping they will come doesn't necessarily work anymore. And in terms of traditional advertising, long term, we have to think outside the box, and that's why we, as a company, started focusing on creating a social impact. And we'd been doing that for years, but we didn't know what to call it until recently. So what I want you to think about through the presentation is to think of your marketing as building a relationship with your customers, whomever you serve, and develop a strong bond with them. And that is what social impact marketing is meant to do, is to grow those relationships. So with that said, I will go ahead and dive in. So what is social impact marketing? It's a strategy where brands take an active role in the community over and above their core mission. So always going above and beyond where you can. Under these strategies, brands actively advocate for positive change or to advance a specific cause. In this way, a brand functions as a member of society and not just a faceless provider of services and products. So just really getting involved in your community, which is always a good thing. And then why is it important? And I got some stats here. Basically, it's proven to be effective. More Americans these days consider a company's stance on social issues or other issues before they consider to even buy a product. They want to look into you and see what you're about. So some of these, I don't know if you can read it, I'll read it off. 63% of Americans want businesses to advance the cause of social and environmental change, as an example. 87% of Americans are more likely to make a purchase from a brand that promotes a cause they care about. And 76% of Americans will avoid purchasing from brands that promote a cause that goes against their beliefs. I will give you a quick example. I will not eat at Chick-fil-A because they gave money back in the day to anti-LGBT organizations. As a member of the community, that's a big no-no. So even though they said they stopped, I still won't go. So it's one of those things where people like me will remember that and associate that with your brand. So it's very, very good to be careful about what you do. The opposite is also true. So 73% of millennials are going to spend more for a product, pay more for a product, if the brand is environmentally sustainable. 2/3 of Gen Z, who are now buyers, I know we're getting old people, have already stopped buying from brands that aren't aligned with their values, and 40% of them said they would continue doing it again and boycotting brands that go against their values. So that's something really, really impactful on business. So the better your relationship, the more likely that customers are going to want to buy from your brand. And I like to say that's how you become their favorite. Now, let's talk about where do you begin, right? How do you start a social impact marketing campaign? For it to be effective, it must align with your company's mission, values, and core competencies. It has to make sense. You can't just come out of left field with something that has nothing to do with your company. So it can't be really far removed from the brand. A good example that I found is, think of a shoe store wanting to help, the homeless. They wouldn't go and open a soup kitchen because it's not really what they do, right? So instead, they would choose to probably help by donating new shoes, which is something that's commonly needed for our homeless and displaced. And to create your first campaign, there are 3 essential ingredients that I'm going to go through with you guys. Number 1 is knowing your customers. It's important to understand what's important to them. Number 2 is to be authentic. And I know that that comes up a lot and it feels like a buzzword these days, but I can't express it enough. Practicing what you preach. And then be transparent, which is more about communications with your customers as well as your team about what you're doing moving forward in terms of making a social impact. So everyone's on the same page. So knowing your customers. It's important to know them and understand what's important to them if you want to launch a social impact campaign, because if it doesn't mesh well with their values, your efforts could actually backfire, which would be very, very costly to your brand long term. So really understanding them and not being afraid to ask questions, sending out surveys, things like that, to understand what causes are important to them is always very, very highly recommended. And I have here how you must engage with your customers and ask what matters to them, and as well as employees. It's important to engage with them and any other stakeholders. What we do at ACE Studios is we have what's called the ACE Forward project, which is where we donate 5% of our net profits to a nonprofit every month. And so we bring the team together every month and say, okay, who do we want to support this month? Like, what's going on in the community? So we've donated, I think, thousands of dollars now to different causes, from supporting women entrepreneurs in Africa to a lot of different causes locally as well. So something I enjoy doing. And we never tell them we're going to do it. We always surprise them. It is always fun. So being authentic, it's important to practice what you preach. For one thing, it's the right thing to do in terms of going forward with a social impact campaign. So what that really means is, if you're going to go forward with a social impact, you can't be working against it. And the example I've included here that I found, and I couldn't find the name of the company, but because total rabbit hole, I couldn't do it, is an Indonesian paper company. They were selling facial tissues with pictures of endangered animals to raise awareness about the endangered animals, but the paper product was produced by clearing pristine rainforest where they live, and where a Sumerian tiger was found dead. So highly counterintuitive, wouldn't you say? So be very careful. And being transparent. It's important to be clear with your customers and your team about what you're doing. All too often, it's easy to get caught up in boardroom-friendly doublespeak about green initiatives, or keeping things within little pocket groups where not everyone knows what's going on. Talking about working together for a brighter future was just kind of a broad statement. I think getting specific is more important for making a social impact. So people really need to clearly understand what it is that you're doing with your social impact campaign. And as advertisers, we know good advertising is good communication. So communicate clearly, tell people where you stand on an issue important to them, and show what you're doing to promote that cause. So whether that be when you go on a team outing, taking pictures and posting it later, or doing, we actually just did, we were hired to produce some video content for the Reno Women's March, and we did a follow-up video series where we interviewed each member of our staff to say what it meant to them to participate in that. And that content really helps your brand express, like, hey, you care about this, and also, like, we do video. Helps them later on, hopefully with sales. I'm waiting. There are 4 types of social impact activity. And you could do one of these, 2 of these, all of these, if you really want to be an overachiever like me. So the first one is philanthropy. This is the oldest, tried and true known model for making a social impact, giving money or any other kind of donation to a charitable foundation, a cause or nonprofit. Volunteerism. So a lot of companies offer paid time off, usually up to like 1 day, I think. To go and volunteer somewhere. I highly recommend utilizing that as a team building experience if you can, and get everyone together to go to one place. If you can do it more often than just once, I think it would make more of an impact, of course. And then sustainability, reducing your brand's impact on the environment. So being environmentally conscious, for us, we decided like we were going 100% digital, no more printing things out, which is hard for me to do because I love to sketch on things when I'm building websites. But we really wanted to reduce our footprint. The last one here is equitable labor practices. So showing the community that you care about the well-being and happiness of the people that you work with. And I'll have an example of this later from Apple, because you probably know it's easier to remember the negatives than the positives. So there of locations probably that treat their staff poorly. And you're like, I'm not going to go there. They underpay them. They make them work long hours. They don't give them benefits. Like, nope, not getting my business. Walmart. I worked there in college. I speak from experience. All right. So here are some examples of impactful campaigns that I'll go through with you guys. And these are videos, and I hope you all can see it. If not, I can send the deck to Jody later to share. Here's Nike's equality campaign.
Is this the land history promised? Here, within these lines. On this concrete court. This patch of turf. Here, you're defined by your actions. Not your looks or beliefs. Equality should have no boundaries. The bonds we find here should run past these lines.
It's been a long time coming.
Opportunity should not discriminate. The ball should bounce the same for everyone.
Change gonna come.
Worth should outshine color.
Oh, yes,
If we can be equals here,
We can be equals everywhere.
change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
And Nike has, you guys have probably seen, they've doubled down on this many times with the Black Lives Matter movement. They had Colin Kaepernick, who graduated from Reno, by the way, in some of their ads as well, which was, kind of controversial to some people, but to others, it made them grow closer to the brand by showing things like this. In terms of dissecting this ad for social impact reasons, to me, this says that they have shown equality through sportsmanship, because everyone on the field is equal, right? Does anyone have any other thoughts about, anything they noticed about this campaign making an impact?
I do have an example of watching this and thinking this is amazing, but also knowing about the controversy they've had on their ethical sourcing and some of the steps they've taken in that, but also how much further they have to go. So it is something, like you said, as a Gen Zer, I think this is beautiful, but I also know they have a lot more work to do to equal this, because and so that's just interesting. As I was watching that, I was thinking
Oh, but see, I didn't know that, so that's really helpful. And it just speaks to the point earlier of making sure that they're doing this, but they're producing their products ethically.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I think, did they put out a statement saying they were gonna make a concerted effort?
Yes, there have been quite a few steps, but there's still it keeps coming out slowly, but every time it does, they seem to get on it. So hopefully we'll see that equal up to this over time.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not one of those you have to keep a spotlight on them to
Correct,
make
yeah.
change, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I might use that next time.
It'd be really interesting. I'd love to do more research on where they're at currently, because it's been a while since I've looked into it. So.
Yeah. So here's another example from Dove. This was a campaign called Reverse Selfie, hashtag the selfie talk, and I try not to cry every time I watch this. So this says the pressure of social media is hurting our girls' self-esteem. If you can't read it, more screen time during the pandemic has made that worse. Have the selfie talk today at dove.com. And let's change beauty. So I really love this ad. I think it's very timely. You know, mental health has definitely been a highlight of struggle during the pandemic. And from a social impact and equating it to what they do, my thought was that, of course, Dove's main audience is women. So they're saying we care about how you feel, not just on the outside, but on the inside, which is, I mean, really profound. Does anyone else have any thoughts about anything they noticed in this video?
She was such a good little actor.
I know.
Without saying it.
Well, it's interesting. Most of Dove's marketing focuses on, women that are usually over 35, over 40. In the past it's been about you are beautiful, you're still beautiful and all that. So it's interesting that they're now trying to talk to young girls and young women because Dove hasn't been seen as a brand for young girls.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting they're trying to kind of
From a
get into that space.
Yeah, from a positioning standpoint, it's interesting.
Well, and their preliminary marketing tagline was "Love the skin you're in" for many, many years, which anchors itself in putting yourself in self-worth. But they're fundamentally a soap company, and they're a mass market soap company. Like, they're on shelves at Walmart. They're not a Sephora specialty brand or anything like that. So to really engage with their broad audience in such a way is really important and impactful. And they're a beauty company in essence, like soap and scented fragrances and all of that stuff. So being able to pair what could be easily perceived as vanity with something that is fundamentally healthy, like looking yourself in a proper light, it's important and impactful.
Yeah, especially with social media. I mean, you saw she was going through filters on Instagram, and there's so many kids these days that every photo they post, there's a filter on it because they don't feel like that they look good enough. And so I like that they kind of showcased that here. The next one I'm going to show you guys is from Hallmark, and it's Adopt a Pet campaign.
It doesn't matter what shelter you're in, how nice it is, how not nice it is. These guys go through depression, fatigue, mental fatigue. And those are the ones that I want to get out of there and get into my house. Every single night I find a different dog from a different shelter and I bring him home just to give him a night away from that environment. Hey guys, what's going on? How are you, pal? I spent the first 20 years of my life living in a world where all I wanted to do was get stuff. What can Scott get? How much money can Scott make? 10 years ago, almost to the day, I realized that it's not about what I can get, it's about what I can give. That was a powerful moment in my life. Hey guys, I'm hanging out with my girlfriend Amelia today from the animal shelter. She was having kind of a bad morning, so I decided to get her out of the shelter, take her for a long car ride, and we're wrapping the day up with a little bit of ice cream. Sharing my post on social media is helping animal rescue. When I place an animal, I don't even think that I can describe the feeling, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a feeling of relief. I get to exhale, I get to relax. It's emotional, you know what I mean? There's no way around it. It's absolutely emotional. Not everybody can volunteer, not everybody can donate, and not everybody can adopt. Even the smallest act will go a very long way. When you care enough to help animals, you can change the world.
And that is hashtag care enough. So I thought this was an interesting example to show you guys because it's kind of like, okay, Hallmark's a greeting card company. Why are they working with pets, right? But through that hashtag alone, it told me like, okay, I get it. So sending someone a card shows them you care about them, right? So I think this is how they're tying it together, that they care enough about pets and other causes to really highlight that. Does anyone have any other thoughts about this particular ad?
I think what's interesting about this one and Dove is not only are they trying to sell their brand, but they're imploring other brands, right? So Dove, they're saying social media has power. So anyone who has the power over social media you are also responsible. Like, you are also part of this. And Hallmark is also saying, you know, you're also part of this system too, is like you can be a part of the change. So it's not only employing their brand, but also other brand owners to take on that mission as well. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, a good call to action is always amazing. And immediately after seeing this, I was like, I want some dog cards now. I have 2 dogs and a cat. One of them's a corgi, so he gets a lot of attention. Can't take him anywhere. This last one I'll show you is from Apple, and this was a diversity and inclusion campaign that they did.
Open. Open a door, and it opens all the others. Open a mind, and see what happens next. No great thing, no beautiful invention was created in a vacuum. It happens when we leave our comfort zone and come together. Embrace faiths, cultures, disabilities, differences. Embrace races, ages, ideologies, personalities, creating a tool or device nobody saw coming. Humanity is plural, not singular. The best way the world works is everybody in, nobody out. So who we're made of is everyone. Differences not just celebrated, but essential. Many more women in charge. Equal pay for equal work everywhere. A new generation of Apple, more diverse than the one that came before. Open is not just who we are, but what we believe as a company. Because humanity isn't singular, it's plural. The truth is, we don't see things the same. The power is, we don't see things the same.
I think this is a really powerful recruitment campaign on their behalf. And it's hard to do sometimes with corporations because there's always, you know, they've had their own troubles in the past with workplace issues. Apple had it back in the late 80s or early 90s, I think, with how they were treating their employees. But now they've really made a concerted focus on diversity and inclusion. One thing they mentioned as well is equity in the workplace. And we talked about that earlier with how you treat your employees, right? So this is, you know, I'm obviously an Apple person. When I see things like this, it's just very reassuring and knowing, you know, some of the backstory of like how much, you know, an Apple Store employee makes an hour and it's a livable wage and things like that. Did anyone else notice anything in this ad or have any thoughts?
I noticed that the product placement
Wasn't overt.
Yeah, I think I only saw one iPad and one watch.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice because it didn't distract you.
Yeah, and you just see like a computer lab in the background, I think, in one of them. So it wasn't like, hey, buy a laptop. It was truly about the mission, which is inclusion and diversity, which I liked.
Did you say that these were like real employees?
I don't know if these were real employees, but that's a good question. I'm gonna have to look that up later. I hope they are.
They do, but I don't know.
But even just using the voice, I mean, you can tell that it's not a white person.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
The whole message is diversity. They could have easily chosen someone, but I feel like they thought about what they wanted to as their response.
And one thing people, or at least from an agency perspective, because we do a lot of work with people with disabilities, for example, when people talk about diversity, they usually leave that part out, people with disabilities, and what that means. Like, it's a whole thing, but like it's kind of like everyone has a disability. Like I have to wear glasses, so that's a sort of a disability. I have ADHD, that's kind of it, but I like that they included that voice in this ad because they get so left out and forgotten, and as well as many other of the people and culture shown in this ad.
I think the image of the pregnant woman was very profound. Like, I don't know why. It was very, like, as a woman, just made an impact.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing today in the news, there's lots of contention around, how women are treated during pregnancy in the workplace and whether or not they have time off. I read a story last week about a woman who had to go to work a few days after she gave birth, which is like real soon. And because her, I mean, I've not done it, but I'm just saying, I'm like, that is a lot. I'm like, you need more than a few days, I'm sure. And it's just tragic to hear that there are places that they don't care about that. They're just like, you're here to work, you're a number to us, right? And so it's really encouraging when you see all of these different representatives throughout the ad. I love it.
One thing that I will add as a marginalized person is traditionally, I love how they emphasize not only that there are varieties of people within their workplace, but that, again, like I said, equal pay for equal work, they're also treated equitably. And that is something that is very commonly left out of diversity and inclusion initiatives, is that, yes, feel free to have a seat at the table, but you're not going to, pay the same or do the same amount of work and things like that. So that emphasis within the ad is also, and all of them had in common, you're going to feel good, even if you don't work at Apple, you feel good about participating in their progress. Even though I don't buy Dove products, I approve of their messaging, so I'm comfortable somebody else using or purchasing it for somebody else. And all of those things had that in common, is that even if you don't participate, you still come away feeling positively about that organization.
Yeah, because like we said earlier, the reverse is true. When you know there's a company that works against that, and a friend of yours is like a patron of that place all the time, they're on Facebook checking in, and you're like, what the hell are you doing? Don't you know that they're against my rights? Like that they don't like my existence, what have you. And that's happened to me many times. And you have to educate people on like, this is why I'm so upset. And and equity, just so Jody mentioned I'm a former elected official. I was on the Washoe County School Board for a short period of time. One of the things, equity is getting twisted by a lot of different groups into being something ugly and something that it's not. And I think as advertisers, we have to work against that because we are the ones that, we create culture through our ads, right? So equity is a really, really important component of all of this. And to me, that's just meeting people where they're at, right? Like in this ad, people with disabilities, you said a seat at the table. Sometimes you have to build them a table, So that is, in conclusion, more than ever, customers are considering a brand's stand on social issues when they buy. I added here to survive and thrive because I think this is really a long-term, like you're always going to need to be thinking about this and doing something. Brands need to create an effective, authentic social impact marketing campaign in order to reach savvy audience potential buyers, especially these Gen Zers. I know it's TikTok is the big thing right now. I haven't dove into that yet, but they're buying. They're buyers now. They've grown up, so we have to think of them. Thank you. Any questions?